parents, Rye and Joanne Charlton, expressed concerns for their safety due to their age.
Shafilea Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, a British Pakistani girl. Shafilea's father, Iftikhar Ahmed, originally hailed from the Gujarat district of Pakistan. At the age of about 20 to 22, Iftikhar moved to Britain for employment. While staying there for a while and during work, Iftikhar falls in love with a foreign girl and marries her. Soon he becomes a father, but when he returns to Pakistan and informs his family about his marriage, they do not accept it. Then Iftikhar's family puts heavy pressure on him to marry another Pakistani girl. Despite Iftikhar's resistance, he eventually succumbs to his family's insistence and he marries a Pakistani girl named Farzana. After the marriage, Iftikhar returns to Britain and, after revealing the truth to his first wife, divorces her. Then, after some time, Iftikhar calls his second wife, Farzana, to Britain from Pakistan. After coming to Britain, Iftikhar starts living with his wife in the city of Bradford in West Yorkshire. It is here that on July 14, 1986, Shafilea Ahmed is born. Shortly after Shafilea's birth, the family moves to the town of Warrington in Britain. It is here that Shafilea completes her early education. During this time, 2 more daughters are born in the family, and Iftikhar's family grows larger. Although this family resides in Britain, on holidays, Iftikhar used to take his wife and all his children to Pakistan for vacation. Now the year had come, 2003, and by now Shafilea Ahmed had also turned 17 and was studying law. Her dream was to become a lawyer. When Shafilea and the other children have a break on February 18, 2003, Shafilea comes to Pakistan with her family for vacation. During their trip to Pakistan, this family also participates in a family wedding ceremony. However, just a few days after this wedding, a major incident occurs with Shafilea. She accidentally drinks fennel floor cleaner. Actually, fennel is commonly used in Asia for cleaning floors in homes. Now, because fennel is made by mixing some chemicals and soap, drinking it causes severe pain in Shafilea's throat. The reason behind Shafilea drinking fennel is initially said to be because her parents pressured her into arranged marriage with a Pakistani boy. Because of this pressure, Shafilea drank the fennel intending to end her life. But later, her parents claimed that someone had poured fennel into an old bottle of water, kept in the same bottle usually used for drinking water, and in the darkness of the night, Shafilea mistook fennel for water and drank it. Due to this mistake, Shafilea had to endure a lot of pain. As a result, she's admitted to a hospital in Pakistan. Now, because Shafilea's injury was quite severe, she has to stay in the hospital for a long time. During this time, the holidays of other family members also end, so Iftikhar takes his 2 children and wife back to Britain, while Shafilea has to stay in Pakistan for treatment. However, shortly after, Iftikhar arranges for Shafilea's return as well, and on May 27, 2003, Shafilea returns to Britain. Straight from the airport, Shafilea is admitted to a hospital for treatment through an ambulance. After several months of treatment, Shafilea's throat heals considerably, and now she rejoins college. Alongside college, she also starts a part-time job. But on September 18, 2003, a college teacher notices that Shafilea Ahmed hasn't been coming to college for the past week. Attempts are made to contact Shafilea via phone, but she cannot be reached. When teacher asked about this to Shafilea's parents, they revealed that Shafilea has not been home for the past week. Their daughter has been missing for a week, and her parents hadn't filed any complaints about her yet, which strikes Shafilea's teacher as very strange. Immediately after this, they inform the police. Upon filing the case, a police team arrives at Shafilea's house for investigation, and questioning begins with her parents. Shafilea's parents say that they last saw Shafilea at their home on September 11, 2003, and since then, she hasn't been seen. Upon this, the police ask, "When your daughter has been missing for a week, why haven't you filed a complaint with the police yet?" To this, Shafilea's parents respond, "This is not the first time Shafilea has been missing from home for a few days. It has happened several times before. To confirm this, when the police checked the records, it is revealed that Shafilia has been missing from home several times in the past. The first time was when Shafilia was only 12 years old. She went missing with her younger sister on March 10, 1998. Because of this, her parents had also filed a missing report for both their daughters with the police. However, at that time, Shafilia returned home with her sister as evening approached. According to records, Shafilia ran away from home for the second time on November 25, 2002. Once again, her father, Iftikhar Ahmad, filed a missing report for his daughter. After extensive searching, Shafilia was found by the police sitting in a park. According to police records, for the third time, Shafilia left home with a friend on February 3, 2003. This time, Shafilia did not return home for 2 days, and then on February 5, 2003, she went to a safe house for orphaned people and filed a report against her parents for domestic violence and mental abuse. After the report was filed, the police officer spoke with Shafilia Ahmed and her parents, and after everything was cleared up, Shafilia returned home. After this, on February 18, 2003, Shafilia, along with her 2 sisters and parents, goes to Pakistan for a family function and disappears from there shortly after returning to Britain. Now, looking at old records, the police also suspect that Shafilia Ahmed may have gone somewhere again this time and will return home in a few days. Therefore, the police try to find Shafilia in all those places where she could have gone. However, even after a few days, the police cannot find any trace of Shafilia from anywhere. Considering Shafilia's history of running away from home before, the police show a little laziness in the investigation this time. After this, some local media start making an issue out of the police's laziness. As a result, demand for a thorough search for Shafilia increases at the local level. Due to the progress in the Shafilia missing case, the police accelerate their investigation. Subsequently, they discover numerous poems written by Shafia at her home. These poems reveal her dissatisfaction with her household environment. Her parents wished for Shafia to lead a traditional Pakistani girl's life, but she favored Western culture. Through her poetry, she expressed this pain. As Shafilia's poems reach the public, the case gains momentum, putting pressure on the police to find her. Consequently, law enforcement intervenes, intensifying their search efforts in places Shafilia could have visited. Eventually, CCTV footage confirmed Shafilia's identity to her parents, confirming that the girl in the footage is indeed Shafilia Ahmad. A few days after Shafilia went missing, her parents identified her. This made the police believe that at least Shafilia was alive. However, a new turn in the case occurs when the CCTV footage shows Shafilia's class teacher. Actually, when the picture is shown to Shafilia's class teacher, they say that the girl in the photo is not Shafilia Ahmed. Some other people also confirm by watching the CCTV footage that the girl in the footage is not Shafilia. Now, the police find it very strange that Shafilia's parents themselves did not recognize their daughter from the CCTV footage. The police had many questions in their minds, and to find the answers to those questions, they secretly installed some audio recording devices at Shafilia's home. The police were listening to everything that was happening in Shafilia's house through an audio recording device. According to the recording, one day Iftikhar is heard saying, "In Britain, if you kill 40 people and there is no evidence against you, then the law here can't do anything to you." Additionally, one day Iftikhar Ahmad is heard saying, "If the police collect DNA samples from inside the car, what could happen?" Furthermore, the audio recording device captures some suspicious conversations that lead the police to suspect that perhaps Shafilia's father had something to do with his daughter. Now, because the police start to doubt Iftikhar Ahmed, they use his audio recordings as evidence, and on December 18, 2003, the police arrest Iftikhar and his wife Farzana Ahmed, along with 5 other family members, on charges of murdering Shafilia and hiding her body. The police had arrested these people solely on suspicion. The police hoped that during the investigation, some concrete evidence would be found against these peoples. However, no evidence was found against any of the arrested persons, and eventually, the police released them all. It had been a year since 2004, and there was still no evidence in the case of Shafilea Ahmed. The police were engaged in efforts to locate Shafilea. Meanwhile, floods occurred in the famous Kent River, flowing from the Sedgwick area of Britain. When the floods were under control, the body of a girl were found in extremely poor condition on the banks of this river. The distance between the place where the body was found and where Shafilea Ahmed had disappeared was 70 miles. But still, the police have doubts whether this corpse could be Shafilea's. However, to confirm this, DNA samples are collected from the dead body and then matched with the DNA of Iftikhar and Farzana. In this case, a major twist occurs when a body washed away in the flood matches with the DNA samples of Iftikhar. This meant that the body washed away from the river was not someone else's but Shafilea Ahmed's, meaning in the search for Shafilea Ahmed, whom the police had been looking for the past year, now reaches the police itself in the form of a corpse. Now, the biggest question in front of the police was who and why murdered Shafilea Ahmed. However, even before the statements and actions of corpse's parents, there were doubts, and in 2003, these two, along with 5 others, were arrested. Therefore, once again, Shafilea's parents are arrested and questioned. The trial of this case is also going on, but even this time, no allegations can be proven against them, which leads the police to release them again. However, after that, the police detain some other suspects and proceed with the investigation against all of them. But despite many efforts, the police cannot reach the murderer. As time passes, people slowly start to forget about Shafilea Ahmed's case. Shafilea disappeared in 2003, and now it was 2010. That is, it had been 7 years since Shafilea's death. By now, Shafilea's family had also moved on from the incident and had become busy with their daily lives. But then, on August 25, 2010, a major theft occurs at Iftikhar Ahmed's house. By now, Iftikhar Ahmed's family had already become the center of attention in the city due to their daughter's disappearance. Due to this, when theft occurs in this house, it starts making headlines on the front page of newspapers. But once again, this puts heavy pressure on the police. Despite working honestly, the police quickly get involved in the search for the thief. After many days of hard work, the police make a revelation that surprises everyone. Actually, the police arrest not someone else, but Iftikhar Ahmed's daughter, Alicia Ahmed, on charges of theft in the house. In fact, Alicia was Shafilea's younger sister. According to Alicia, she didn't get as much money from home as she demanded and needed. Because of this, she orchestrated the theft of her father's money at her own home. However, the police had solved the theft case very quickly. But the police spot an opportunity here and now. They start talking to Alicia about her sister Shafilea, who disappeared many years ago, and reopen the file related to the Shafilea case. In the initial conversation, the police suspect that Alicia knows something about the disappearance of Shafilea that the world is still unaware of. The police officers try to uncover what happened with Shafilea, but Alicia refuses to cooperate with them. However, the police then tell Alicia, "You have orchestrated a theft in your own house, which could lead to a long prison sentence for you. But if you can provide any information about Shafilea that nobody else knows, your sentence could be significantly reduced." Afterwards, when Alicia reveals some details to the police, everyone is left stunned. Alicia explains, "It was not someone else but my father, Iftikhar, and my mother, Farzana Ahmed, who had beaten Shafilea Ahmad in front of all of us sisters. Then our father put polythene on her face, and due to suffocation, she was dead. Then he placed Shafilea's body in his car and threw it into the distant jungle. However, due to the flood, the body drifted to the riverbank from the jungle." According to Alicia, Iftikhar and Farzana did not like their daughter's modern lifestyle at all. On the surface, Shafilea started falling in love with a boy, and when this matter comes to light, Iftikhar and Farzana quickly try to arrange Shafilea's marriage with their preferred boy. When the family goes to Pakistan for a family function, there is an attempt to forcefully marry Shafilea to a boy there, but Shafilea refuses to marry for this reason, and she consumes fennel. After that, her health deteriorates, and her marriage does not happen either. When Shafilea returns to Britain, her family members here also insist on arranging her marriage with a boy of their choice. But when Shafilea repeatedly refuses this marriage, her father gets angry, and at first beats Shafilea in anger and then covers her face with a polythene bag, and then due to suffocation, Shafia Ahmad dies here. But immediately after this disclosure, Alicia Ahmed becomes a government witness in the case. In exchange, she is assured a minimum sentence in the theft case. However, based on Alicia's statement on September 2, 2010, Farzana and Iftikhar are arrested, and then a case of their own daughter's murder is pursued against them. Both of them remain in jail for several months after the arrest. However, nearly a year later, on September 15, 2011, they are granted bail by the Manchester Crown Court. In the further investigation, the police gather some crucial evidence, and based on that evidence, the trial of this case begins in the Chester Crown Court on May 21, 2012. Initially, Farzana and Iftikhar continue to deny their involvement in their daughter's murder, but when Farzana begins to suspect that she is being framed for her own daughter's murder, she finally accepts in court on July 9, 2012, that Shafilea Ahmed's murder was not committed by anyone else but by Iftikhar Ahmed himself. In her statement, Farzana also reveals that she tried to stop Iftikhar, but instead, Iftikhar beat and threatened her family, saying, "If any of you ever talk about this to anyone, your fate will be just like Shafilea's." Now, 2 witnesses had testified against Iftikhar Ahmed. Besides, the police who gather evidence also indicate that it was Iftikhar Ahmed who murdered Shafilea, then threw her body far into the jungle. However, a natural disaster struck that area, and with the floodwaters, Shafilea's body drifted and reached the riverbank on its own. After a lengthy trial in August 2012, Farzana and Iftikhar are found guilty of murdering their own daughter and disposing of her body. After the murder, they are then sentenced to 25 years each. It is also proven in court that this was an honor killing. Following this verdict, every year on July 14th, Shafilea Ahmed's birthday, the National Day of Memory for Victims of Honor Killings, is observed in her memory. So with this, the case of Shafilea Ahmed comes to a close. However, perhaps nature also desired that Shafilea Ahmed receive justice and her killers be punished. Therefore, albeit late, Shafilea's parents, her murderers, are also sentenced.
As you begin to explore the Leslie Palacio case, it is impossible not to feel bewildered and disappointed that justice has not yet been served. The killer remains at large, even though the police have all the evidence and his identity is known to them. Today's story underscores the difficulty of investigating crimes when suspects find themselves outside the jurisdiction, and victims can only hope that the perpetrators will be found and brought to justice. The morning of the 29th brought anxiety to the home of Rosalia Palacio, mother of 5 lovely daughters. Her eldest daughter, Kayla, came down to the kitchen and reported that the bed in Leslie's room was untouched. Her belongings were gone, and she clearly hadn't spent the night at home. One of the sisters joked that it must have been a pretty fun night at the club, and Leslie had probably stayed the night at Eric's. In fact, everyone became alarmed, since Leslie had never done this before. Over breakfast, Kayla kept glancing at her phone, expecting a waking Leslie to be about to text. Time passed, but still no word from Leslie. By noon, it stopped seeming normal. By late afternoon, Rosalia decided to go to Eric's house on her own and find out where her daughter had disappeared to. When the Palacio family members drove up to the house, they saw Eric's mother and his sister actively removing pieces of furniture and miscellaneous items from the house. Obviously, taking furniture out of the house is quite normal, but the situation itself and Mrs. Ibarra's crying face caused a very strange feeling for Rosalia. Something was not right here. When asked where Leslie was and why Eric's phone was unavailable, Eric's mother and sister pretended that they didn't even know that the couple had spent the evening together. Rosalia once again clarified whether Leslie had slept over at their house that night, because she knew from her daughter's messages that she was going to Eric's house After receiving a negative response, Leslie's family realized the seriousness of what was happening. Fears became reality, and the family immediately took action. The older sister, realizing that Leslie could not have disappeared so easily, began calling local hospitals and searching the internet for reports of accidents in the last 24 hours. However, the search was unsuccessful, as were attempts to contact Eric. He had either turned off his phone or the phone was dead, as Kayla couldn't even hear the voicemail. Rosalia had no choice but to call the police. The next day, August 30th, Leslie was officially reported missing. The move was the first in an intense fight for justice. Leslie Palacio was born on May 5, 1998, in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Her short but full life was full of love and caring for her family. Always open and friendly girl became a source of joy in any company, as she valued everyone she met in her life and was reciprocated. Leslie dreamed of connecting her life with medicine. After graduating from high school, she entered the Las Vegas Medical College. In 2020, she was already confidently moving towards her dream of becoming a phlebotomist and worked part-time as a lab technician, combining theoretical knowledge with practical skills. Leslie proved herself to be a talented student. Her academic achievements were admirable. She was able to easily assimilate new material and always strive to deepen her knowledge. That is why the girl decided to work part-time as a laboratory assistant. Unexpectedly, Leslie realized that she had found her calling and soon became an integral part of the team. Colleagues considered the student not only a responsible and professional lab technician, but also a warm, responsive person. The girl's duties included conducting various analyses and tests, but for Leslie, this work was much more than just a fulfillment of duties. She saw her calling in the ability to make the process of taking tests as comfortable as possible for patients. Her caring and patience created an atmosphere of trust, and even those who were apprehensive about the procedure felt at ease in her presence. When the youngest of the nurses asked if Leslie was afraid of getting her hands pierced all the time, she laughingly replied that she now had a super ability to poke people. The young optimist's vitality was evident in her every action. By all accounts, Leslie had the unique potential to become a sought-after and valuable specialist in the field of medical laboratory diagnostics, and she would have, if not for a dramatic turn of events. Leslie has been used to helping and caring for everyone since childhood. As the second of 5 daughters, she took on the role of mother when Rosalia Palacio worked as a hotel cleaner. Rosalia recalled her daughter kicking her out of the kitchen when she tried to cook dinner after cleaning more than 15 hotel rooms in a shift. "Get some rest," Leslie gently urged her. Wanting to relieve her mother's burden after work, her daughter took it upon herself to prepare dinners and, in her characteristic easygoing manner, found cooking to be a source of inspiration. From then on, she always made sure her family members were very well fed, and even if she was away and couldn't make the family dinner herself, she always called home to make sure everyone had eaten. For Leslie, family came first, and she easily inspired her sisters with her energy and ideas. For example, even during the pandemic, Leslie didn't let sports disappear by organizing workouts in the backyard of the house. She taught her mother various exercises, and with her sisters she danced daily in front of the mirror to music. Her love of experimenting with hair color and image turned it into a joint business plan with her older sister to open a boutique. The sisters began designing and sewing dresses at home in their own unique style. When the coronavirus pandemic happened and Rosalia was laid off due to downsizing, Leslie suggested her mother start her own small cleaning company and assured her that she would definitely help her with the cleanings in her free time from work and school. "Mom, we'll be fine soon, you'll see," she assured Rosalia. At a family council, they came up with a name for the company, the Palacio Cleaning Service. At the time Leslie disappeared, her dreams were just beginning to be realized. Their family firm had landed its first contract. But on August 29, 2020, all of the Palacio family's plans and dreams came crashing down. At the end of August 2020, Leslie completed the lab assistant program, and the family firm also received a large order. The girl decided it was time to take a break from the stresses and worries and enjoy an evening of dancing and fun. Especially the restrictions due to the pandemic were gradually being lifted, and Las Vegas began to come alive. Unfortunately, none of the friends wanted to keep Leslie company. Although people were beginning to let go of their fears and return to their normal lives, they still felt nervous and anxious at the prospect of being in a closed space with lots of people. Leslie didn't give up hope of convincing someone to have fun and posted a post on Instagram expressing her desire to spend the evening somewhere. Unexpectedly, she received a message from Eric Rangel Ibarra. Leslie and Eric's parents had been attending the same church for 14 years and occasionally socialized. So the children had known each other since childhood, but had never interacted closely. Leslie knew what Eric liked. The guy texted her, showed her attention, but Leslie never reciprocated. She was polite to him, however. On any other day, Leslie would have declined Eric's desire to keep her company, but not this time. She was eager to dilute her ordinary life with a fun evening. The whole day passed in anticipation and anticipation. And when none of Leslie's friends wanted to keep her company, she accepted Eric's polite and warm offer to reminisce about Las Vegas nightlife. Sharing a night out with Eric seemed like a better choice than going nowhere at all. Expecting a fun adventure, Leslie had no idea what horrible events awaited her, but she probably had a premonition of something, trying to rationalize to herself that there was no cause for concern. Anyway, Leslie agreed with her sister that she would send her regular messages, telling her exactly where she was. She also told Kayla in great detail where she was going and with whom and what places she might end up in. After a while, the older sister received a strange message. "Can you believe Eric is totally not going to drink this evening? We're at a party, but it looks like I'm going to have to party alone." Afterward, the sisters exchanged joking messages on the topic of healthy living. The first place Eric and Leslie went to was the casino at the Longhorn Hotel. Police officers would later see on surveillance footage of the couple getting out of a white Ford F-250, owned by Eric, at 0:31 a.m. on Ayug 29 and entering the casino, then leaving a short time later at 1:56 a.m. The couple would then leave the casino. Leslie kept in contact with her sister, telling her what was going on. At 4:40 a.m., Leslie sent her sister another strange message. "I need to talk to you about something shitty." Kayla asked what happened and, according to her, a text box popped up, as if Leslie had started to reply, but no answer ever came. That text message was the last of the girl's life. The morning of the 29th came. Leslie still hadn't returned home. The more time passed, the more concerned the Palacio family members became. The certainty that Leslie had stayed the night at Eric's house was replaced by confusion, and the family went to a familiar house, where they found a strange scene. Mrs. Ibarra and her daughter were taking out furniture, pretending that they had heard for the first time that Leslie and Eric had spent the evening together. In fact, Leslie's family arrived at Eric's house just in time. If they had arrived a few hours later, the investigation would have been significantly delayed. The police found traces of blood in the house, a mess in the bedroom, which suggests that Eric's mother and his sister spent the whole day, strangely enough, not to clean up the traces of the crime, but to pack things, down to the pieces of furniture. The family was clearly not going on a picnic, but planning a long-term and thorough absence. Most likely, they had arranged to reunite with Eric and his father, Jose, in Mexico, where the two had traveled in order to escape justice. Upon seeing the Palacio family, Mrs. Ibarra probably realized that the chance to leave was gone, leaving evidence in the house that no one would take the time to clean up. Panicked, mother and daughter began to simply deny knowing about Leslie and Eric's evening together. It was this behavior that led to the suspicion that something irreparable had happened. Fortunately, the Las Vegas police took immediate action and sent out a billing inquiry intending to track Leslie's movements since the previous night. But unfortunately, it takes some time to get that data, while the Palacios couldn't sit back and wait. The family started a campaign to spread the word about Leslie's disappearance. People responded and began actively sharing the information on social media. No one expected that there would be so many people who cared. Eric's mom especially didn't expect it. Detectives kept asking more and more questions, and on August 31st, Mrs. Ibarra went to the police station and filed a missing persons report for her husband and son. Mrs. Ibarra told police that her son, Eric, left home late in the evening on August 28th. And when he returned the next morning, he was acting strangely. She saw him walk out the door and never returned. The police noticed a strange circumstance. Not only was Leslie missing, but Eric was also missing, as well as his father. Based on this, an investigation into the triple disappearance began, with the Las Vegas police involved. Detectives turned to the residents of the neighborhood with the hope of finding surveillance cameras that recorded something important. Luck smiled. It was discovered that just across the street from Jose Ibarra's home, there were surveillance cameras. In addition to the CCTV footage, police obtained billing data that allowed them to track Leslie's movements in the early morning hours of the 29th. Detectives found that the couple went to the casino and afterward to a grill bar, which they reached around 02:15 a.m. Accidentally or not, Leslie's cell phone was left at the bar, and the records show that Leslie left the establishment around 5:50 a.m., which is quite early in the morning. At 06:05 a.m., neighborhood cameras captured Eric's car pulling up to the family home. The nature of his assistance to Leslie in getting out of the car and on the way to the house clearly indicated that the girl was heavily intoxicated. At 07:25 a.m., Eric and his father, Jose, are seen carrying Leslie's body out of the house, wrapped in a sheet, and placing it in the trunk of the car. Eric then drives away while Jose hoses down the driveway to their house. These actions clearly indicated that Eric and Jose were not missing, but were fugitives from justice. After police saw the footage, a search warrant was obtained for Ibarra's home. As a result, detectives uncovered a lot of additional evidence showing that Leslie had not left the house voluntarily. The house had been cleaned with cleaning products in an unsuccessful attempt. Latex gloves and trash bags were also found. But the most important piece of evidence was the discovery in Eric's room. Traces of blood were found on the floor and on Eric's bed, an obvious sign of assault. And without DNA testing, it was clear to investigators that the blood belonged to Leslie. From that point on, Leslie Palacio was no longer missing, and investigators focused their efforts on finding her body. Eric and Jose were reported missing. As investigators searched diligently for suspects, the shaken Palacio family made efforts as well. Roselia asked members of the church community to help search for her daughter's body as search volunteers. Flyers and posters with Leslie's photo and images of Eric and Jose appeared on social media, newspapers, and street poles. The Palacio family is asking the public to intervene and help them find these two men involved in the girl's death, was the message on each flyer. The first major breakthrough in the investigation came when a license plate reader spotted Eric's car just 6 miles from his home around 10 a.m. August 29. He was heading back to his home just 4 hours after Leslie's alleged murder. The information uncovered made investigators realize that the location where Eric may have hidden the body was within a 4-hour drive of his home, on the Nevada-Arizona border, or the Charleston Peak side, which is a huge area. So detectives were desperate for any additional information that could help them determine a more precise location. Once again, luck smiled on them when footage was recorded at a gas station 40 miles north of Las Vegas, showing Eric's car pulling off the highway toward the Valley of Fire National Park. The car backed up 20 minutes later with muddy tires. The find narrowed the search and pointed to the possible location of the body within 20 miles of the gas station. The mud on the tires suggested that Eric had driven off the road at some point. Detectives began searching the area. Police and volunteers combed through hundreds of acres of land, and on September 9, during a second search, they found Leslie Palacio's body hidden near a bush. News outlets immediately spread the word. The body of 22-year-old Leslie Palacio has been found near the Valley of Fire, 11 days after she disappeared. A reporter joined the report, providing additional details about the prime suspect, 25-year-old Eric Rangel Ibarra. The Valley of Fire, where the body was found, is known for its hot climate, which led to rapid decomposition of the remains, and forensic experts were unable to determine the exact cause of death. Locals reacted to Leslie's death with horror and fear. Some became afraid to go outside because of the constant thoughts of the unquote criminals involved in the murder. The day after the body was discovered, September 10th, many friends, relatives, neighbors, and just random people in the area gathered to honor Leslie's memory. People took candles that were used for the nightly vigil and placed them in front of the girl's house. They also said they wanted the man responsible for her death to pay for what he did. The fight for justice was not even close to being over at this point. The next major breakthrough came when Eric's car flashed in Moreno Valley, California. Police eventually contacted Eric's cousin, and he reported that he had driven Jose and his son to San Isidro, where he believed they planned to cross the border into Mexico. The Las Vegas Police Department requested assistance from the FBI because it was not possible for them to resolve the jurisdictional issue on their own. The investigation slowed down. Then, on January 19, 2021, 4 months after the discovery of the girl's remains, Eric's father, Jose, turned himself in at the border. Everyone was greatly relieved that at least one fugitive was now in custody. The man was quickly extradited back to Clark County and charged with destruction of evidence and accessory to murder. During interrogations, Jose tried to minimize his involvement in the crime, explaining the story of the trip to Mexico by his son's strange behavior on the morning of August 29th. However, investigators showing surveillance video footage debunked his false claims. The footage clearly showed him helping carry Leslie's body out of the house and washing the driveway. Faced with the evidence, Jose changed his testimony. He said he was working in the garage when Eric brought Leslie's body, wrapped in a sheet, into the garage. According to Jose, he panicked and helped his son load the body into the truck, assuming that Leslie had died of an overdose of illegal drugs because he saw no visible injuries on the body. Court documents indicate that Jose initially told police that, according to Eric, Leslie died of an overdose of illegal drugs. Jose also explained that Eric immediately talked about wanting to end his life, blamed himself, and so he decided that the best thing to do for his son was to take him to Mexico. When investigators asked Jose for Eric's current whereabouts, he explained that as soon as the two of them entered Mexico and boarded the bus was searched by Mexican authorities. He and his son got scared and decided to split up, thinking that apart it would be harder for the authorities to find them. For this reason, he would love to help the investigation, but has absolutely no idea where his son might be. On June 18, 2021, Jose formally pleaded guilty to destruction of evidence and accessory to murder. Despite the horrific characteristics of his crimes, Jose Ibarra was sentenced to only 2 years in the Clark County Detention Center, causing shock and dismay in the community. The Palacio family was shocked and outraged by Jose's lenient sentence, which they felt was unjust. During the pandemonium, Jose Ibarra joined the court proceedings virtually, while Leslie's family and friends attended in person. They urged the judge to impose a harsher sentence, arguing that 2 years was not enough for an accessory to murder who helped dispose of the body and hid the perpetrator. Jose Ibarra pleaded guilty and tried to apologize to Palacio's family, saying his love for his son outweighed him. He expressed regret for his actions. However, Leslie's family did not accept his apology and did not consider it sincere. To date, Eric's whereabouts remain unknown, and he continues to live a free life in Mexico. Jose was released on April 28, 2022. Ofelia Marcarian, attorney and representative of the Palacio family, commented as follows: "I am absolutely furious. This is simply unfair. Not only is the main suspect not in custody, now the one who was involved in covering up the murder is back in custody after serving 8 months and 15 days. Over the past 3 years, the Palacio family has never gotten justice." Leslie's story highlights the flaws in the justice system and raises questions about fairness in dealing with serious crimes. The Palacio family is determined to fight to change the law in Navarre because they believe that whoever was involved in the murder should receive a longer prison sentence than 2 years. They hope that the perpetrator will be found and prosecuted in the United States, where he will be charged and given the punishment he deserves. Ofelia Marcarian is directly reaching out to those who may know of Eric's whereabouts in Mexico. In every media interview, she calls for Palacio's family to be given a small measure of justice. August 12, 2019 started out completely normal. Teacher's assistant Lindsay Burbeck was on vacation, and she planned to spend the day with her family. She and her daughter Sarah shopping in Blackburn in the afternoon, and then they agreed to have a nice family evening over a cup of tea and meet her daughter's human boyfriend. They said goodbye, and Lindsay returned home to change and go for her daily walk to the woods. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she left the house and never came back. Let's delve into this sudden disappearance and try to figure out why this particular day tragedy happened and who is to blame. The events are set in the town of Blackburn in the county of Lancashire in northwest England. The town is located in the southern part of the county on the Blackburn River by the Leeds-Liverpool Canal at the junction of 4 roads and near rich coal mines. Blackburn is renowned for its natural environment and has 4 huge wooded parks. Lindsay separated from her husband, Tim Burbeck, in July 2018, but they continued to live together in Upton until March 2019. She then moved to her new home on Burnley Road in Hancote. Lindsay cared for her 2 adult children, Stephen, 20, and Sarah, 17. She worked as an upper-grade teacher's aide at Acton Hill Elementary School in Burnley and loved being surrounded by children. Lindsay was a talented artist who could go the extra mile to create the most amazing props for school productions and plays. On the fateful day of August 12th, she went for a walk in a wooded area known as Coppice, near her home in the village of Hancote on the outskirts of Accrington, and disappeared. At the appointed time, Sarah and her boyfriend Brandon arrived at Lindsay's home, but no one answered the door. Sarah became worried, as it was out of character for her mother to forget a scheduled tea party. She tried several times to contact Lindsay, but no one answered the phone. Sarah then sent her a text message that read, "Where are you? We sat outside for an hour and called 6 times. After receiving no response, Sarah sent another text message with a series of question marks, but again received no response. After waiting outside Lindsay's house for an hour, Sarah called her father, Tim Burbeck, to let him know her mom wasn't home and wasn't answering her phone. Tim took a frightened Sarah and Brandon back to his house. Near midnight, Sarah and Tim headed to Lindsay's house again, but with a set of spare keys. To their dismay, she never showed up. Inside, the house seemed quite ordinary and showed no signs of any incident. There was no note of explanation either. At 12:11 a.m. on the night of August 13th, Tim Burbeck contacted police and told the dispatcher, "My ex-wife seems to be missing. We can't find her. It doesn't look like her." Lindsay Burbeck was reported missing. Lindsay's disappearance shook up the community. The people of the small suburb banded together and went out in search of the woman. There were hundreds of people, men and women, grandparents and people walking dogs, teenagers with bicycles and even moms with strollers. To most, Lindsay was a stranger. But that didn't matter. After days of desperate searches, social media appeals, and posters, people still gathered at Kappas for 2 consecutive days in the hope of finding a vital clue that could solve the mystery of Lindsay Burbeck's disappearance. After several days of fruitless searching, it was clear to everyone that the search was going to be difficult. With each passing day, the chances of finding Lindsay alive dwindled. Detectives classified Lindsay Burbeck as high risk. She had never gone missing before, and her family described the disappearance as very uncharacteristic of her. Nevertheless, the search did not stop for a moment. Locals printed thousands of posters to distribute throughout the neighborhood, while a Facebook group associated with the search quickly grew to 10,000 members. A few hours after the police appeal was posted online, the first posters with Lindsay's face on them could be seen all over the neighborhood. Within a couple of days, there wasn't a lamppost, storefront, or traffic light that didn't have a poster calling for the search for Lindsay. Police launched an investigation into the disappearance from the house, as extensive searches were carried out by specialist police officers, dog handlers, Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service, mountain rescue volunteers, and the city's search and rescue team. Drones and helicopters were also deployed to search the area covering Kappas and the surrounding open countryside for a considerable distance, including popular walking and running routes. 4 days after Lindsay's disappearance, Lancashire police released CCTV footage showing when she was last seen alive. Walking along Burnley Road at 4:10 in the afternoon towards Kappas, she was wearing a purple jacket, black leggings, and dark sneakers with white soles. A week had passed since her disappearance on August 19th, and with each passing day, there was less and less hope of finding Lindsay Burbeck alive. Police are still no closer to the whereabouts of the mother of 2, but emphasized that there was no evidence that she was the victim of a criminal act, meaning there was still a chance of finding her alive. The search for Lindsay continued. That evening, hundreds of local residents took part in the first mass public search of Kappas after a rallying call was made on social media. Things moved when a local resident's dog ran into a wooded area in Accrington Cemetery. He yelled and called her name several times, but the dog didn't respond. The dog hid its head in the bushes, sniffing and trying to dig for something. The dog's owner walked over to him, stood next to him, and was horrified to find that there was something very soft under his feet. He was frightened and bounced back. Then he smelled a horrible odor and flies were swirling around. A plastic bag and something that looked like a foot were visible from the ground. On August 24th, 12 days after Lindsay Burbeck disappeared, her body was found under the most horrific circumstances buried in a cemetery. The naked body, wrapped in 2 clear plastic bags, mixed with earth and grass, was placed across a shallow grave. The search for Lindsay Burbeck was considered complete. A murder investigation was officially launched. Pathologist Dr. Naomi Carter, after conducting an autopsy, determined that death was due to a broken neck. The trauma was inflicted with such force that the entire larynx had crushing injuries. The neck was most likely struck with a foot or knee. An attempt to cut off Lindsay's right leg after death was also determined, possibly with a saw, as tine marks were found. A large laceration was found on the leg, which had been cut down to the bone. The injuries Lindsay suffered were catastrophic. Dr. Carter also reported that due to the poor condition of the body, it was quite difficult to determine the victim's injuries. But she did not rule out any sexual activity on the day of her disappearance, which could not be ascertained due to the level of decomposition of the body. Prior to the discovery of Lindsay's body, members of the public and police had searched the same area for several days without success. Community volunteers and a police dog handler reported seeing a blue wheelie garbage can abandoned in bushes nearby. However, at this stage of the investigation, no one was yet aware of the significance of the tank. Volunteers who searched the cemetery at 9 p.m. August 20th also found the same dumpster with a dark stain on the outside and thought it might be blood. After taking pictures of the dumpster, they called the police. 2 police officers arrived on the scene to inspect it and found a brown mark that they thought was dirt. The police said the dumpster looked brand new and there was no evidence at the time to link it to Lindsay's disappearance. Therefore, it was left in place. There were other important clues found in the cemetery that were not immediately accepted. For example, local resident Christine Alderson discovered a bloody cloth on the grass at the cemetery on August 18th while she and her daughter were walking their dogs. She said the blood on the cloth was fresh and red, but thought it might have belonged to a homeless man who frequented the area. Another woman who walks dogs, Judith Bibby, reported seeing red clothing hanging on a barbed wire fence near the Cargill Hill Trail that was probably Lindsay's jacket. She also heard a voice, presumably a child's, but heard no struggle, yelling, or screaming. On August 25th, investigators revisited the crime scene and found a yellow-handled saw and a pair of green, heavy-duty gloves near Lindsay's grave that had several traces of blood. The evidence was taken to forensic testing, and it came back positive. The gloves contained the perpetrator's DNA on the inside surfaces, and Lindsay's DMA was found on the outside surface of the left glove. A pair of her Skechers sneakers, which had been cut along the sole, were also found in a blue plastic bag discarded in the cemetery. Examination of other evidence revealed that Lindsay's body was wrapped in some kind of plastic sheeting, and between the body and the sheeting was found foliage and grass that was not in the cemetery grounds. This led investigators to believe that the body had been moved from another location. That's when detectives remembered a blue trash can that had repeatedly caught the attention of volunteers. Police officers studying the CCTV footage soon made a startling discovery that left the investigation team baffled. Several images showed a young man pulling a blue wheelie garbage can in the Burley Road area. Over the next few days, a CCTV camera captured a certain guy returning to the cemetery 4 times. Thanks to that footage, a suspect emerged. The video of a young guy carrying a trash can down the street, possibly with Lindsay's body, became a sensation. The video was shown on the news with a plea for help identifying the man. And it worked. The boy was identified by shocked teachers and parents. The teen surrendered to police the same day. His name was withheld until sentencing due to his age. He was only 16 years old at the time of the crime. The boy in the videotape turned out to be local resident Rocky Marciano Price. Rocky Marciano Price lived with his parents and 5 siblings on Winnie Hill Road in Accrington. It had been the Price family home for about 3 decades. The young lad had an impressive array of mental health abnormalities. Rocky had suffered from autism, attention deficit disorder, and hyperactivity since childhood. His low IQ created additional learning and communication challenges. He attended an alternative school in Barnoldswick several days a week and was described by teachers as a very quiet and non-speaking student. In 2015, a psychologist assessed Price as having a limited understanding of his own emotions and his own emotional well-being. He had pronounced impairments in understanding the connections between events and emotions. Another 2016 report described Price as unresponsive to strangers and in constant need of supervision and care. Timothy Bradley, who taught at the school for 18 months, said they were always looking for ways to involve him in education, but Price preferred practical things to academic subjects. Price hardly ever engaged in conversation, even when it came to a topic that interested him. Teachers described Rocky Price as quite strong physically and tough for his age. He went to the gym regularly, liked to tend to the chickens on the family farm, and loved watching movies and playing Xbox. The guy lived in his own world and wasn't always aware of his actions. So what drove him to attack Lindsay Burbeck? Nothing at all. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time when Rocky Price was hunting lonely women. He was looking for a woman to kill, and he didn't care who it was. This was a completely random murder at the hands of a stranger. On August 12, 2020, exactly 1 year after the crime, Price finally stood trial. Rocky Marciano Price was unanimously found guilty by a jury after an 8-day retrial and 4 hours of deliberation. Appearing via video link from Her Majesty's Prison Wetherby, Price, 17, did not react in any way when the judge read out the verdict. There was also no reaction from his parents in court. He pleaded guilty to helping dispose of Lindsay's body, but claimed he played no part in her death. Rocky Price claimed he was approached by a male stranger and asked to assist in the burial of the woman for a fee. In a prepared statement, he admitted moving the garbage can and burying the body, but said he had no involvement in Lindsay's death. However, a search of his home in Accrington revealed plastic bags that were identical to those at Lindsay's grave. A tracksuit and other clothing was also analyzed and matched the one he was wearing on surveillance cameras on August 12, 16, and 17. Defense attorney Mark Fenhalls told jurors that Price did a horrible and heinous act by burying the woman's body in the cemetery, but he was not her killer. Despite the abundance of evidence against him, Rocky Price pleaded not guilty to the crime, but admitted to moving Lindsay's body. After 2 days of questioning, Price, through his attorney, prepared a statement to explain his movements between Coppice, where police believe Lindsay was killed, and the cemetery where her body was found. But the prosecutor affirmatively stated that Rocky Price acted completely alone. The motive for the random attack on the 47-year-old mother of two was never revealed, as the perpetrator did not even know the victim. The judge sentenced Price to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. He will only be released when the parole board decides he is not a danger. The judge said the attack was swift and brutal. There was no doubt the defendant sprung with the intent to kill a woman who was walking by. Just minutes before Lindsay's incident, Zoe Braithwaite had managed to get away from a hooded teenager with her hands in her pockets, walking alone on a parallel path. Her sixth sense kicked in, and the woman was instantly wary. Zoe was confused by the guy's appearance. He looked out of place for a walk in the woods for this time of year. She quickened her step and then ran away. That probably saved the woman. If it hadn't been her, it could have been someone else. And it was Lindsay. This was a premeditated attack. After missing one woman, he didn't back off his plan to attack another lone woman. His actions after the crime clearly showed that he had the ability to plan and reason. His teachers told the court that he was much better at practical tasks than academic subjects. He used this ability to hide his body. Rocky Price was found to have made 2 return trips to Coppice on the evening of August 12th. The first incident occurred at 6:55 p.m. when he was seen on CCTV cameras carrying a black rucksack. Possibly in it, he was carrying a found saw to dismember Lindsay's body. The next incident occurred at 8:28 p.m. when dog walker Anthony Dewhurst was seen pulling out an already empty garbage can. This is the same spot where his grandfather, who bears his name, and other family members are buried. Without panic or excitement, young Rocky Price, acting alone, set in motion a plan to dispose of Lindsay's body by placing it in a blue garbage can, like a piece of trash, and then burying it in a shallow grave in Accrington Cemetery, wrapped in 2 plastic bags. He set in motion a plan to dispose of Lindsay's body by first hiding her in a blue wheelie garbage can, and then dragging her to the cemetery. Finding a quiet and secluded spot near the railroad line, he spent over an hour burying her body before leaving the saw, gloves, and a trash can at the scene. The murder of a stranger in broad daylight, for which there is no rational explanation, is particularly horrifying to all right-thinking members of society. The random nature of the attack suggests that the accused poses a very real danger to members of the public. The stalking of another woman before he killed Lindsay Burbeck demonstrates that his crime was not caused by a sudden loss of control. 24 hours after he was found guilty of the crime, publication restrictions were finally lifted by a judge, allowing his name and picture to be made public for the first time. Rocky Marciano Price's identity was kept secret during the first and second trial. The jury was told many important details about Price, but they could not be fully disclosed because of his young age. The judge rescinded the disclosure of the restrictions after the jury unanimously found Price guilty of the crime. The defendant's mental illness cannot in any way excuse or even explain his actions. After all, it is quite obvious that he realized that it was terribly wrong to kill, but did it anyway. Although fortunately such crimes are rare, they instill fear in society. However, the main question in this case remains unanswered. Why did the young guy needed to kill a strange woman, and for what? Only Rocky Price knows the answer. But he didn't answer it. Perhaps if it wasn't Lindsay Burbeck, it could have been someone else. Lindsay's funeral was held at St. Margaret's Church in Hapton on September 20th. More than 200 mourners gathered at the church as police stopped traffic on Manchester Road, while Lindsay's coffin with her body covered in flowers was carried into the church. Dozens of flowers from friends and family, and from strangers whose hearts were touched by Lindsay's story, were left at the scene. Sarah described her mom as a very optimistic and positive woman. Lindsay was making plans for the future. She was planning a trip to Glasgow with her friend Sharon. She dreamed of finding love on the Match.com dating site. Lindsay Burbeck planned a long and happy life for herself and looked forward to the future with optimism. But all those dreams were interrupted one sunny summer day. Lindsay Burbeck's family and the detectives who investigated the crime welcomed the jury's unanimous verdict, but said no court verdict could ever bring Lindsay back or spare her family and loved ones the grief of loss. In front of the courthouse after the verdict was announced, members of the defendant's family wore T-shirts that read, "Wrongfully convicted, set this boy free." The back of the T-shirts read, "The killer is still at large." Maybe Price is an aspiring maniac. He just wanted to take a man's life, to feel what it's like, to watch someone die and mutilate them. Most likely in any form, it's an absolute neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by problems with social interaction, motor, and behavioral stereotypes. In translation, the word autism means a person who has gone into himself or a person within himself. Autism is still an understudied developmental disorder that can occur due to genetic or hereditary abnormalities. The exact cause is not fully understood, but in our story, the punishment most likely fits the crime. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Karina Vetrano. The story of Karina Vetrano is both horrifying and baffling. Firstly, nothing seemed amiss on the day of the fateful event. The attack occurred in broad daylight in a fairly populated area. Secondly, her death has critical aspects to it. Thirdly, the investigation and sentencing of the perpetrator raised many questions. On Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016, Karina arranged to meet her father after work to spend time together. Since Miss Vetrano had moved away, family gatherings had become rare because everyone was busy with their own matters. In addition to her commitments, she was balancing two jobs. Philip picked up his daughter and took her home. There, the family shared their impressions of the past week. When Karina was about to leave, she asked if her father wanted to go jogging with her, as they often did, covering several miles together. Her father replied that he couldn't this time due to severe back pain that nothing seemed to alleviate. Perhaps he needed a new prescription, or maybe it was just the change in weather. Mr. Vetrano offered to call a cab for Karina due to his discomfort and inability to join her run. However, the weather was beautiful, the heat had abated, and there was a fresh scent in the air, hence Karina declined his offer. She was training for the upcoming marathon. The young woman had recently broken up with her boyfriend and wanted to distract herself. A jog would clearly do her good. That evening was the last time her parents saw their youngest daughter. At 5:45 p.m., she left the house for a jog. Her first stop was Spring Creek Park, a cozy and tranquil place buried in greenery, a true paradise amongst the city's infrastructure. However, only part of the park was available for walking. The rest was covered with thickets and swamps. Mr. Vetrano asked his daughter to stick to her usual route and stay away from unfamiliar paths and people. Unfortunately, Karina ignored his advice in search of solitude. She decided to go to a grassy, deserted place. Karina's thoughts were abruptly interrupted. She felt a sharp pain in the back of her head and fell down. This rash decision cost the young woman her life. A frightening uncertainty entered the Vetrano home. It had been 2 hours since they had said goodbye to their youngest daughter. She should have been home by now, or at least answering the calls of her parents, who were frantically trying to reach her, and she had promised to keep her cell phone with herself. The anxiety was growing. Her father sensed that something was wrong and decided to seek help from his neighbor, the chief of the New York City Police Department. They were on good terms, and the high-ranking official knew that Philip would not make a fuss over nothing. After that, Karina Vetrano was reported missing. Police began searching for the young woman, combing the park area and surrounding streets. As a result, experienced canine units were brought in, since it is known the first 24 hours after the sorcery. The disappearance of a person are crucial. Law enforcement utilized all available resources before nightfall. At the same time, Mr. Vetrano, along with a group of volunteers, searched for his daughter on his own. He scoured the park from end to end, combing paths and wading through tall grass, all while making phone calls. As dusk fell, he noticed a light in the grass. As he approached, he recognized Karina's phone. Maybe she lost it and just didn't let them know? Philip approached, headed toward police officers, deciding to continue picking his way through the thicket, stepping into the grass. As he ventured further, Philip stumbled upon something soft, a partially undressed female body lying face down. When he turned it over, a familiar face stared back at him. A desperate scream escaped from his father's chest. It was Karina. She hadn't simply lost her phone as he had initially believed. His little girl didn't answering her phone because life had been cruelly taken from her. The crushing realization of what had transpired overwhelmed Mr. Vetrano. The police, hearing the screaming and yelling, quickly rushed to him. They dragged Philip away from his daughter's body, explaining that it was now a crime scene. They emphasized that anything in the vicinity could be considered evidence and implored him not to touch anything to prevent tampering. On the journey home, Mr. Vetrano was lost in thought, tormented by how to break the news of their daughter's death to his wife. Images of past memories flooded his mind. He recalled vividly how on July 12, 1986, in Queens, their second daughter was born. From an early age, Philip had been proud of Karina. She was obedient and well-mannered. He remembered taking her to school for the first time and how excellently she performed academically. Her strong educational foundation enabled her to earn advanced degrees. Karina graduated from St. John's University with a master's in speech pathology. She always dreamed of aiding children and worked tirelessly with autistic kids. Karina loved traveling and writing and had a passion for sports, especially running, an interest she shared with Philip, which brought them closer together. He recalled how closely he scrutinized her suitors out of paternal jealousy, eager for her to find true love and eventually establish a strong family like his own with Kathy. He hoped for wonderful grandchildren. The return journey felt endless. As they approached the house, Mr. Vetrano paused at the entrance and took a deep breath. Fortunately, he didn't need to explain anything to her. She understood everything from her husband's face. Kathy cried, approached her husband, and hugged him. Soon, Karina's relatives and friends learned of the incident. They struggled to recover from the shock. Believing in the sudden death of the young woman was hard, let alone its violent nature. Miss Vetrano had been subjected to a brutal attack. This was the conclusion reached by investigators. At first glance, it was obvious that the woman had resisted. Even in death, her fists remained clenched. Bruises and abrasions were found on her once young and healthy body, and her athletic clothing was torn. The autopsy showed that the back of the victim's skull had been damaged by a blunt object, probably a stone. However, the cause of death was asphyxiation. A clear mark was visible on the woman's neck. The forensic examination also revealed the intimate nature of the crime violence. The experts' findings confirmed the police's initial suspicions. Earth and grass were found under the victim's fingernails, probably in an attempt to free herself from her attacker's grip and escape. Specialists examined her mouth and found teeth knocked out and cracked in places. She had clearly bitten to defend herself. Even the woman's neck was covered with numerous scratches. She was grabbing with her hands, trying to force her attacker to let go of her. Shortly after this tragedy, new information leaked to the media from Princeton, Massachusetts. Another jogger's body was found among tall grass. The woman had apparently also been out for a walk in a secluded place and suffered a similar fate. At first glance, these cases seemed identical, raising questions about another potential serial offender. In the United States, geneticists took charge of the case, tasked with comparing DNA samples collected from the crime scenes. Fortunately, unidentified samples were found on both victims. Contrary to police expectations, the analysis showed no connection between the crimes. It turned out that the DNA samples belonged to different individuals. It's well known that most lethal crimes are committed by someone close to the victim. Thus, police couldn't ignore any possibility. To this end, the victim's father provided his DNA, since he was first to discover his daughter's body. Later on, all of her relatives also underwent a DNA test which yielded no matches. Detectives then decided to interview Karina's family and friends to find out if she had any enemies or ill wishes. It turned out there were none. She was respected and loved by everyone. Investigators developed a new theory. Someone acted on base motives upon meeting Karina in a secluded place and attacked her. Feeling stuck, they sought public help by offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the perpetrator. The initiative received widespread response. Detectives explored some 250 leads, conducted 600 genetic tests, and compiled more than 1,700 reports, all to no avail. It seemed like the perpetrator hadn't committed crimes before, or at least hadn't been caught for them, complicating things further. On August 31, 2016, a utility worker approached the police station with significant information at the time of Miss Vetrano's death. He found himself in a restricted area of the park one day. Suddenly, a man emerged from the bushes and took off running in a northerly direction. Because of his testimony, the New York Police Department created and distributed a sketch of the suspect in December 2016. However, they considered that the person shown in the sketch might have just been a passerby caught at the wrong place and time. Unfortunately, releasing this sketch didn't provide any new leads, and the investigation fell into another long stalemate. On December 4, 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined in to help solve Karina Vetrano's case. At first, they developed a psychological profile of the perpetrator. According to FBI experts, this individual was very familiar with the area, especially the park where everything occurred, suggesting he might live or continue to live nearby. Fearing capture now, he seems to avoid that area. It was evident he knew that the quiet and partially overgrown territory was perfect for hiding his actions. Based on this idea, police conducted screenings among local African American men. However, this didn't bring about any breakthroughs. Let's go to take a look about Chanel Lewis. Chanel Lewis's life didn't stand out much from other young African American individuals. He lived in one of Brooklyn's low-income housing complexes, approximately 4 or 5 miles from Spring Creek Park. Chanel was unemployed and living with his mother, 3 sisters, and their children. One detail setting him apart was his diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Yet this did not stop him from graduating from a private school for students with emotional and behavioral issues. Former classmates remembered Chanel as a quiet loner who constantly faced bullying. One shared that even girls intimidated and punched him. He had no friends. Another peer noted that while Lewis sometimes fought back, he wasn't effective at it and often got ridiculed for his clothing and appearance. Chanel always wore a hoodie and would smirk and walk away when things got tough, earning him the unfortunate nickname African Lizard. 17-year-old Danielle Munes, a fellow student, described Chanel as a bright student with good grades. "He liked to show me funny videos on the bus," she recalled. "I never saw him being cruel." Some sources reported that the young man once claimed he wanted to harm all the girls during his time in middle school, even posing the question, What happens if I bring a knife to school? Dr. Edward Dana, the executive director of the school to which Chanel was transferred, commented on this. We received no reports of threats in middle school. During his time at our school, he had no disciplinary sanctions. I never heard him make threatening statements towards other students. Nonetheless, Chanel was a troubled teenager who often experienced bullying. He dreamed of working in social services, aspiring to help those in distress. When conflicts arose at home, he would wander the streets frequently and visit the park. Lewis had several minor encounters with the police, 2 for violations in Spring Creek and 1 for urinating in public in May 2016. Another incident happened when a local merchant reported Lewis for loitering in his store with a crowbar. Responding officers checked Chanel's ID and released him as he had no prior incidents. However, this information was retained by the police and later played a crucial role in the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death. In February 2017, Detective John Russo, who was involved in the investigation, remembered something significant. He had repeatedly seen a young man in a hoodie wandering around the park. Russo even attempted to follow him once, intrigued by his behavior. The young man walked slowly and stopped for long periods in front of houses near the park, as if scouting them for potential burglaries. However, Russo lost sight of him when he contacted his colleagues by phone. Following a store owner's report of suspicious activity, a teenager matching Chanel's description came to the police's attention 2 months into the investigation. Detective Russo recalled this wanderer, thinking he might have seen or heard something relevant. Investigators then focused on Chanel Lewis after Detective Russo took a closer look at his file. Chanel's peculiarities had raised their interest. The police began inquiries about him, questioning acquaintances and teachers. It emerged that he had allegedly expressed a desire to harm girls. This news stirred significant concern and suspicion. With no other leads, officers decided to focus on Lewis. It was discovered that during Karina's death, Chanel was not at home. After an argument with his family, he had gone to the park. Upon his return, his appearance was disheveled, his clothes torn, and he had visible bruises and abrasions. When his mother inquired about what had happened, Lewis claimed he had been attacked. His account matched the timeline with a witness's description of a man fleeing the park. Additionally, on August 3, 2016, Lewis's father, a former school principal, took him to the hospital for treatment of severe wounds, mostly cuts, and he also had an injured hand. The investigators reviewed the medical records from that day and found the story plausible. However, they noted similarities between events involving Chanel Lewis and Karina Vetrano. On February 4, 2017, Chanel was brought to the police station and voluntarily provided his DNA for analysis. Detectives wondered if a perpetrator would willingly do this. The interrogation began on the morning of February 5th. Lewis admitted that he was indeed in the park around 5 p.m. on August 2nd, 2016, but clarified he was walking on dirt paths, listening to music, not through thickets. He confessed to encountering a young woman jogging with her phone in her hand. When asked by detectives if something happened when he encountered her, Chanel nodded and quietly said yes. I was walking in the park, trying to distract myself from a family argument, when I met a woman alone, he began again. I decided to follow her. When she passed by me, I grabbed her shoulders and threw her to the ground, then hit her face about 5 times so she couldn't scream. He recalled how his punches knocked out several of her teeth, injuring his own hand in the process, echoing details eerily consistent with earlier evidence they had gathered. He also mentioned that the struggle lasted about 5 minutes. Miss Vetrano fiercely resisted by biting. To avoid drawing attention, Lewis dragged her off the path into Tall, where he tried to undress and assault her. She was horrified, but kept resisting. Chanel then strangled her until he realized she was no longer alive. When asked if he knew the victim beforehand, he replied, I did not know her before this. It all happened by chance. The motive for the act was unexpected and bizarre. Loud music played by a neighborhood gang member for hours had triggered Chanel's hatred and uncontrollable aggression. These negative emotions were unleashed on the unfortunate woman, a strange reason indeed. Investigators' confusion faded when DNA comparison results matched perfectly. Microscopic traces found on the victim's body and phone belonged to Chanel. Consequently, the police and prosecutor concluded the case was solved and ready for court. However, the motive still seemed unlikely. It's possible Chanel had noticed Karina before, since he often went to that park. He might have seen her with her father, liked her, and decided to approach her. After being rejected, he became furious and attacked her, causing the situation to spiral out of control. This scenario would have been more understandable. On November 5, 2018, the trial against Chanel Lewis began. Despite his previous statements to authorities, Lewis pleaded not guilty, a stance echoed by his family denying his involvement in the crime. The prosecution charged Lewis with ending a life and sexual assault, facing him with a sentence ranging from 25 years to life imprisonment. The debate over Lewis's guilt not only unfolded in the courtroom, but also spilled over into the media. Lewis's defense team stirred things up by pointing out alleged legal violations during his arrest, along with several news outlets. They claimed racial bias and discrimination. However, the judge dismissed these allegations as baseless, emphasizing that the investigation complied with legal standards. The prosecution presented tangible evidence and DNA analysis findings, while the defense argued that this evidence was insufficient and contaminated due to many people at the crime scene, including Karina's father, who discovered her body. Forensic biologist Linda Rosano stated that odds of the DNA belonging to someone other than Lewis were 1 in 6 trillion. The prosecutor also introduced Lewis's phone records, revealing his internet searches on second chances and forgiveness in Catholicism, which raised questions about what sin Chanel hoped to atone for. The release of Lewis's confession video sparked further controversy. His lawyers argued he was under immense pressure, leading to a coerced confession. They suspected police might have fabricated evidence. The recording commenced only after Lewis was pressured, raising concerns that the search of his home violated protocols. The defense suggested that the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death was initially mishandled. With public pressure mounting for an arrest, they argued, Lewis became a scapegoat. The jury was deeply influenced by the defense's compelling arguments. After considering both sides, jurors could not reach a conclusive verdict. On November 21, 2018, the judge declared a mistrial. A retrial was initially scheduled for January 22, 2019, but later postponed to March 2019. Following 5 hours of deliberation during the retrial, Chanel Lewis was ultimately found guilty of Karina Vetrano's death and sentenced to life without parole on July 23, 2019. The defense employed delay tactics by citing an anonymous source to allege misconduct by a juror, suggesting jury pressure and conspiracy. A case that seemed straightforward at first sparked widespread prejudices and fears in society. Karina Vetrano's tragic death affected many, serving as a stark reminder for women to remain vigilant about their safety.